So just using the sun and moon as a starting point, for me, direct observation of the sun and the moon was very important. Direct observation because the eyes being the windows to the soul, and to use the eyes to directly observe nature in all its parts, creation in all its parts, to include the sun and moon. It became deeply important to me to observe with my eyes, not images on a screen, because images on a screen were never the true images of nature and how it really looked. It was something that struck me deeply one day. And I realized I didn't really have my own perception or concept of how these things worked above me that I lived under every day. Not of my own. Just of an imagination that was built by things that were taught and things that were portrayed to me. But none of my own until I really took the time and took the effort to gain the attention, to spend my attention in long periods of time, to just sit and observe and to contemplate and to wonder, how did these things relate to me? How did they relate to all of us? How do they relate to all of us all the time that maybe I wasn't aware of? And then later through this whole process of looking into the so-called occult or hidden information or esoteric information, writings, drawings, different religions of different types from all over. The symbology is everywhere, and the language of symbology that really everything is built on underlies all of these different languages that we all used, all these different languages that have been confused. Because we all are man and womankind, yet we speak in so many different ways, in so many different languages, all trying to communicate the same types of messages to each other, but not clearly, for whatever reason, whether the barrier be on the communicator's end or the receiver's end. There are all these barriers. But the symbols and the symbology and the archetypes and nature and the observation of nature and the contemplation of it and the realization that nature itself is mirrored and reflected within us. Not just our physical material body, our physiology, which it very much is, but our spirit, our very essence. The infinite part of ourselves, one might say, that one only needs to find and realize inside to realize that one is more than just the material body. That is the metaphysics that should have been tied with physics, intertwined, which is intertwined, but should have been taught and understood and realized inside each of us as we grew. A whole deeper side of things, the side of us, that was never taught, that has to be searched for and found by each, and it's each's responsibility, I have found, to take the time and effort and develop the willpower to do just that. So while one doesn't have to read all this esoteric, occulted, hidden knowledge, one just needs to reflect deeply inside themselves enough and do enough true learning of their own, or learn how to learn the things they need to learn to put the pieces together within them, to put them together, to unify. So the sun and the moon, just the consideration of those things and symbols. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a symbol is worth 1,000 pictures. And of course it's much, much more than that. But the sun and moon can be found in countless tracing boards in Freemasonry and all over other religions. Some use one symbol or the other, the sun or the moon or the stars. But the point is, the sun and the moon, in their contemplation and observation of these things, you see that they are luminaries. And the light that they put in through the windows to the soul, through the naked eye, has a profound effect on us, on our energy, on our physical and metaphysical energy, so to speak. And the sun has a very direct effect on our physiology, with the pineal gland and the photoreceptors in there, to spread that natural light throughout our body and in our being. And you cannot get that light from a screen. The light transmitted from the screens are harmful wavelengths designed to damage the eyes, weaken the eyes, the rods and cones in the eyes, to weaken and damage the perception. Depending on the content being displayed, the content itself is made to harm and damage the mind and put the mind, especially the right brain creative mind, in thought loops and patterns of pictures, while the words being spoken are designed to program logic in an incorrect fashion, depending on what's being taken. But with the observation of nature directly, nature does not lie to you. Nature does not portray these things to you in such ways as the screens do. So to observe nature directly and then contemplate inwardly on one's own nature directly, it was so helpful to me, and something I just didn't ever take the time to do for so long. But the sun and the moon, like with the pituitary and the pineal gland, night and day, the wake-rest cycle, light and dark, life and death, all these different archetypes, things can be tied together, things can be realized. Then the trick with that, the sun and the moon on those pillars, are those pillars of consciousness, when those are fully realized within, and tied together those archetypes within. That illuminated eye in the center up the ladder, the Jacob's ladder of the spine, the 33 bones in the spine resonating in harmony and equilibrium, it must come from the heart. Because staying grounded in the heart, the conscience, to know together with the heart and mind, that's how one breaks free of the Godhead mind traps that can be created with indoctrination into different esoteric and hidden meanings, twisted ways of conveying these pillars of consciousness that are within, to darkly illuminate them with false light that is much more perceptive, but it's not balanced with the heart, with full conscience. Still, it is still a mind trap to be taken down these pillars out of the center pillar of wisdom, which is your pillar to find, is your pillar to grow. No one can give wisdom. Wisdom has to be distilled from within. The stars above, the sun and moon, in the firmament, in the waters above. The map in the sky, the map of archetypes, the sky clock, the myth and allegory associated with it all of these different archetypes all interrelate within us, within our own experience here. In this life journey, this experience of heart and mind, of body and spirit, of soul, of an infinite energy in a finite experience with a chance to experience it to its fullest, to gain recognition of itself, maybe. It's hard for me to say because I can't speak on the level of the Creator. I can't, and I don't pretend to. But to look at everything presented to us from what I can see from my limited perspective here, with my own perception and reflection inward on it, and then to see the outward reflection of it all and how these different symbols and archetypes have been taught and twisted and instilled within folks for them to play out in these repetitive fashions of games set up by others. I see it's so easy to see how it all works. And it's so easy to see how so many can't see because they're playing out the roles still, as I did myself for so long. But all those mind traps and spells can be broken. Simply breaking away from the screen and the hypnotic effect it causes, the alpha brainwave state as it programs, as folk mindlessly watch and take it in as a mindless distraction, as it poisons their mind. It can simply be turned off, turned away from. And if nothing else, the self can be looked at and analyzed, because there is a lot more to us inside when we really go looking within. And all of our own baggage is ours to sort out. All of our traumas have to be fixed within us, by us. And that's an inner process. It's an inner process to reconcile and fix all of those things so harmful behaviors don't continue. When I started with the sun and the moon, it was those considerations of energy to themselves from these luminaries, and then within us, and light and sound, and what is it, and the dielectric and the magnetic, the masculine, the feminine. It's being able to fully realize and recognize the duality of this nature that we're in, and then realize it's no duality at all. It's a unity, and the point is to become that unity within. One may need only to use the sun and moon. I don't know. It depends on each, I guess, in their journey. But the sun and moon with them in the center, to then try and find some recognition of that trinity, and then to interrelate the trinity within. Mind, body, soul. Left brain, right brain, heart. Logic, creativity, reason. All it takes is to begin the search for how all of these grand archetypes and symbols of nature relate to us all. There is no putting a price tag on that. There is no putting a label on that. There is no specific theology to tie you to any of that, because all of us are simply just tied here to this experience, this physical experience, while we're here to experience this grand experience in our own small way, each of us. But to realize none of us are that grandness of the Creator. However one might name that or internalize that or feel that within. But the point is to feel that. To feel that to a place of knowing. And then to feel that to a place of knowing that one can only be responsible in to govern and control themselves. Because this is not their creation. They are simply a creation with it, as is all other within. So the point is, we are all being ruled already, as we were all put here in this experience by something much greater than us all. And in knowing and fully realizing and internalizing that infinite part of all of our experiences, finding that aspect or part or infinite piece within us, which would be the all of us, that with knowing morality in the heart, in living day-to-day life, in that knowing, guided by that, and in doing everything possible to try and help bring others into balance with themselves, so they stop playing games against themselves, others' games. Everyone can gain and develop their own full self-control over all of their own thoughts and emotions and feelings, and understand and define what each of those things are within them, and operate with those in the moment, every moment, in full control of them, even around others who are not in full control of theirs. That is the state of equilibrium that can be found within, that needs to be found within all in society. For the slave and master mentality within each that are still holding contradictory belief within them, who are still lack and are devoid of all of their own true authority and sovereignty inside them, because they have yet to realize their spiritual nature. That's what must be found and realized. That is how you break free of all of the labels of control, the systems of control that control the mind, that keep the mind screaming in loud repetitive thoughts, that make one unable to hear the voice that's calling to them from their heart, that voice that is the soul that's calling from beyond the heart, but trying to get the heart to fully, truly come to light, to life, with morality, so one's own charioteer, so to speak, can take over. One's own spiritual essence can be realized, and realize it is merely in a physical vessel for a limited amount of so-called time, to experience this experience and gain wisdom within this experience, because that wisdom is going to be the only thing, I would guess, that will travel with us, or with me, or with I, or with you, out of this experience. None of the material things will, including the vessels we call our fleshly bodies. And maybe that simply is the lesson we were all supposed to grow up learning and knowing, was the truth of this existence in our experience. And the realization of that would make one realize quickly, looking outward, that it did not go like that. And it has not gone like that for generations. And that this has to change. And for this to change, we each have to change. And for any of us to change, the willpower within has to be found. And the need has to be realized in the heart, that the need is there to change. And then that willpower acted upon with this physical body in physical ways to stop harmful patterns of behavior, to stop consuming toxic information, to stop believing toxic beliefs, to stop blindly believing in authority, to stop poisoning themselves with the petrochemical-based medicine, to move to a homeopathic nature, plant-based medicine. That is nature's healing. And it is within our abilities, each of us, to use our mind to find that knowledge, and then in the heart to know that knowledge is correct and act in that way, to use the herbs and plants and vegetables of nature, to consume that sustenance, and then observe nature in the light of nature, and to heal ourselves in our minds, and to truly learn things that we can know to be true, that no longer rely on belief, that no longer rely on a leader or a mediator or a middleman or anyone to tell one anything about oneself, because one knows oneself so deeply that one knows that all of this is about much more than any of the petty differences that have been set up for any to have against each other, or any of these material pursuits that are set up to be gained. The real wealth is the spiritual wealth. The real gold is the spiritual gold inside. That alchemical transformation, so to speak, of a more materialistic animal man state or woman state to a spiritual man or woman state that knows that there is a creator above all of us. And in that knowing and in that spreading and trying to spread that knowledge to others so they can help themselves heal. That is how we each of us become servants of others, because we are trying to serve them with the truth that they're more than they have realized than they were taught. And they can grow infinitely more spiritually than they ever realized, because they were left and trapped in in some mind trap or other to keep them in a state of spiritual childhood, so to speak, or mental childhood, in ever growing physically older bodies. And there was a whole nother side to them, a whole deeper, much deeper, profound resonance of their energy that could be found within them at any time. All they have to know to do is to look and to stop and to consider and to feel. I'm convinced each is in there waiting, just waiting, somewhere in their hearts, somewhere out there, that silver cord attached to the ether of the soul, attached to the heart, somehow trying to get message through. Maybe the mind just has to be quieted enough, or the eyes closed just long enough to consider deeper inward, to hear it and to feel that voice. I almost died before I heard that voice in my heart. But so many times before that, I had almost died and I didn't care. Which is why I refer to the first 39 years of my life as kind of is my past life, or the life of another, because I was so disconnected. It wasn't a life of my own. I had no clue on so much, especially about myself. And I had no clue on how absolutely out of control I was, because I had almost no control of my own, because I lived in a constant reactionary state since childhood. And I didn't realize I had grown from that state into just an older, more advanced, more chaotic, ever increasingly confused state of that. And that's because I was so poisoned with information and actual physical poisons, from the vaccines, the food, the drink, the medicine, the so-called medicine I was taking. And it only worsened over the years. It was a state. a constant and continuous state of ever-increasing insanity. Until I was able to stop because I almost died, and then I feel very deeply that I got help. That I got help that I didn't even deserve, maybe, probably from the Most High, because I can't and won't put labels to something I know I can't label, because I won't be one of those mediators. I won't be one of those false prophets or false teachers or snakes anymore, because for 39 years, when I had no control over myself, I was a servant of those snakes. Whatever shape or form they took, of whatever belief that was instilled in me at the time that I acted upon in some reactionary state, not in a state of full control from my heart of myself, knowing morality and having full control, and even knowing what thought and emotion and feeling were clearly defined within myself and how they operated within my own psyche and physiology. I didn't know until I looked deeper, and I should have grown up knowing. I realized that, as my parents should have, as their parents should have, because all that information has been out there forever, and all that information we were born with, it turns out it was in us all along, written in our hearts, so to speak, but all of it can be found within, I'm convinced. Because I'm convinced that the higher force does help those that seek help within them. Not running blindly, physically through reality, seeking to latch on for so-called help from folks in a physical way without knowing what they're doing and leeching their energy from them. No, in an inward, full responsible type of way inside, on an energetic level, physical and metaphysical and every other way that can be contemplated. Take full responsibility within to figure out the who, what, and why of the I or the me or the both. That question came to mind. I thought to myself the other day, a question to ask: can you tell the difference between the me and the I in you? So that's a question to ask the self inwardly. So that is a question to ask inside. What is the difference between me and I? And for myself, as soon as that came to me inside in my mind or heart, how it came, however it came, I could instantly answer that for myself now. And it's easy because of all the inner contemplation, but I have an answer because I've considered it before in different ways, but there is a distinct difference. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you for listening.